All right, we're recording now. Are you ready to go?
Yeah. Greetings and good afternoon to all of you. It is now 1:06 p.m. on the 4th of May, 2021, and we are conducting this virtual hearing via Zoom. We're here for public hearing on abandonment petition AB 774 to consider an application received from Lurch Early and Brewer Chartered on behalf of the applicant, Kingsview Station Joint Venture, seeking the abandonment of portions of the existing right-of-way that fall outside of a proposed realignment of Liberty Mill Road in Germantown, Maryland. My name is Jose Tamana, and I am the County Executive's designated hearing officer with the county's Department of Transportation. This right-of-way abandonment hearing is being conducted pursuant to Montgomery County Code Section 49-62F. My role in the abandonment process is to write a report and make a recommendation to the county executive concerning the applicant's petition for abandonment. In order to do this, I will be considering statements made at the hearing, written comments received within the comment period, and comments will be accepted until May 18th, 2021 at 5 p.m., and documents submitted to support or explain a position. My report and recommendation will then be forwarded to the county executive for consideration, and the executive will then forward the report and the executive's recommendation to the county council. It is the county council that will decide whether to grant or deny the applicant's petition for abandonment. For those who wish to submit written comments, please submit them to Ms. Tiara McCray at the Montgomery County Department of Transportation, 100 Edison Park Drive, 4th floor, Gaithersburg, Maryland, 20878, or email them to tiara.mccray@montgomerycountymd.gov by May 18th, 2021. There are a few ground rules that we must cover before Ms. McCray introduces the abandonment petition into the record. First, please turn off or silence your cell phones. Second, as an issue of decorum, all participants must be given their due consideration. Those seeking to offer comment following the close of petitioner's case for abandonment are asked to be mindful of the time and to limit their comments to relevant matters. Such comments should be confined to less than 3 minutes. If an interruption occurs, I will give that individual their first warning. If there is a second interruption, I will give that individual a second warning, and then they will be muted. If that same individual receives a third warning, that person will be removed from the call. And if there are several people making interruptions, I may close the hearing. So following Ms. McCray's introduction, the applicant will submit its case for why it believes the right-of-way should be abandoned. After the applicant has completed its case, those who have registered to speak will be allowed to make relevant comments. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Tiara.
All right, thank you. I'm going to change the host over to Joshua Tracy. Joshua, are you good to go now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to stop my screen share, and Joshua, let me know when you're ready, and I'll go ahead and start while you pull up the exhibits. Thank you, Mr. Famana. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Tiara McCray, and I'm a real estate specialist with the Property Acquisition Section for Montgomery County Department of Transportation. My section is responsible for administering requests for the abandonment of public rights of way. As Mr. Famana noted earlier, this process is governed by County Code Article 49, Section 62. The code explains the county council may abandon a public right-of-way for two reasons. If the council finds that one, the right-of-way is no longer needed for public use or anticipated future public use, or two, the abandonment is necessary to protect health, safety, and welfare of the residents near the right-of-way to be abandoned. In this case, Kingsview Station Joint Venture, the applicant, represented by Ms. Elizabeth Rogers of Lurch, Early, and Brewer, has petitioned for the abandonment of portions of Liberty Mill Road, previously Route 118 in Germantown. The applicant is proposing a realignment and extension of Liberty Mill Road in connection with their proposed redevelopment of the surrounding area. To facilitate this development, the applicant is seeking to abandon portions of the right-of-way that fall outside of the realigned Liberty Mill Road. The applicant's proposal for the realignment of Liberty Mill will complete the connection between Clopper Road and Lehman Farm Road. I'll leave it to the applicant to address these matters in greater detail during their presentation. This hearing was authorized by the county executive's designee as a part of the administrative process. We have provided the requisite notices to other public agencies, abutting property owners, and the public at large. As part of the process, we have collected a number of exhibits that I will now formally introduce into the hearing record. If my colleague Joshua Tracy can put those on the screen, I will identify each exhibit. Exhibit A, page 1, is the applicant petition for abandonment received on March 2nd, 2021. Exhibit B, starting on page 72. Thank you, is abandonment exhibit area showing the color-coded areas of Liberty Mill Road to be abandoned. Exhibit C on page 73 is the Kingsview Station floating zone plan detailing the applicant's proposed development of the surrounding property. Exhibit D on page 74 is the 1989 Germantown master plan providing an analysis of the Clopper Village area. Exhibit E, page 80, is the Montgomery County Department of Permitting Services, Fire Department Access, and Water Supplies comment, providing no objection to the abandonment with conditions to review any revisions to the September 16th, 2019 Kingsview Station Department Vehicular Access and Water Supply Plan approval. Exhibit F on page 81 is the Montgomery County Department of Permitting Services, Division of Land Development's comment, providing no objection to the abandonment. Exhibit G on page 82 is the Montgomery County Department of Transportation, the Division of Traffic Engineering and Operations comment, providing no objection, noting that there is an existing utility water line along the existing road alignment that the applicant should pay attention to. Exhibit H on page 83 is WSSC's comment, providing no objection to the abandonment with conditions. Exhibit I is the Montgomery County Department of Transportation Development Review Committee's comment, on page 86, recommending approval of the abandonment case with conditions. Exhibit J is the Washington Times ad number 48164 proof with the advertisement dates listed for April 23rd and April 30th on page 89. Exhibit K on page 90 is the Montgomery County Department of Transportation calendar event posting a notice of the public hearing, which was posted on February 24th, 2001. Exhibit L on page 91 is the certified mail receipts for the public hearing notices that were submitted via certified mail on March 1st. Exhibit M on page 96 is a notice of public hearing and comment solicitation that was submitted to county agencies via email to the agency points of contact dated March 9th. Page 96, thank you. Exhibit N on page 97 is the notice of public hearing and comment solicitation that was submitted via email to the company points of contact dated March 9th. Exhibit O is the mailing list for the abutting property owners and HOAs and community associations that were notified via mail on page 98, thank you. And then Exhibit P on page 99 is the HOA and civic association contact lists. The items that are shown in yellow represent those who were contacted via mail, as they did not have an email address listed on file. The rest of the points of contact on this list were notified via email, and we'll see that in a later exhibit. Exhibit Q is the Executive Order 22-21, approving the public hearing for this particular abandonment on page 100. Exhibit R is the traffic sign posting the public hearing. This is posted on the corner of Clopper Road and Liberty Mill Road, installed before April 16th, 2021. Exhibit S is the notice of public hearing that was submitted to HOAs and community associations via email dated March 9th. And then Exhibit T, I actually have that one, and it's the applicant's PowerPoint presentation that they will showcase here. Thank you, Mr. Tracy, and I'll now turn things back over to Mr. Famana.
Okay, thank you, Tiara and Josh. We will now go to the presentation of exhibits, the applicant statement, and I'll hand it over to you, Elizabeth.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Tiara, do you want me to pull up the PowerPoint, or are you? Okay. You're on mute, but I think you're saying you were going to do it.
Yes.
Okay.
Josh, can you allow me the opportunity to do that? Yes, thank you.
Yes, you're at it.
Thank you, sir. And
Great, thank you. Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Elizabeth Rogers, the law firm of Lurch, Early and Brewer. It's a pleasure to be here today on behalf of Kingsview Station Joint Venture, the applicant for this abandonment application. With me here today is Dan Fryer and Clark Wagner with Pleasance Development representing the applicant. We also have Tim Longfellow and Kevin Foster with Goodchick, Little and Weber, the land planners and civil engineers for the project. We are here today to request an abandonment, as Ms. McRae mentioned, of portions of the Liberty Mill Road right-of-way, which was formerly MD 118, which was expanded and relocated predominantly in the 1980s. Portions of the old MD 118 right-of-way have been adaptively reused, whereas other portions, including the subject right-of-way, have largely remained dormant. That will soon change for this portion of the right-of-way, as the applicant is proposing to redevelop the surrounding vacant property with a mixed-use, predominantly residential development. In connection with that redevelopment, the applicant is proposing to extend and realign the Liberty Mill Road right-of-way to reintroduce the connection between Clopper Road and Lehman Farm Road. If you'll advance to the next slide. This just is an aerial map that shows the location of the property. The property is comprised of several individual parcels, generally located in the southeast quadrant of the intersection of Germantown Road and Clopper Road. You can see the parcels identified within the yellow boundary, with the exception of there's one parcel right at the intersection of Liberty Mill and Clopper that's owned by Pepco and not included in the redevelopment application. The property has frontage on Clopper, Germantown Road, Lehman Farm Road, and the Liberty Mill Road right-of-way that runs through the approximate center of the property. If you'll advance to the next slide, please. The Liberty Mill Road right-of-way, as I mentioned, used to be 118, but when 118 was expanded and relocated in the 1980s, it was stubbed in a cul-de-sac. So that's the current condition of Liberty Mill Road. You can see the photos on your screen are kind of as you're proceeding south down Liberty Mill Road from Clopper Road. If you'll advance to the next slide, there's some photos showing the condition of the existing cul-de-sac bulb. As you can see, the roadway is relatively poorly maintained, which we feel presents safety concerns today, especially given its condition, but also the fact that it's surrounded by vacant land on all sides. So there's really no eyes on the street today. Therefore, to facilitate the redevelopment of the property, if you can advance the next slide, the applicant is proposing to redevelop the property with commercial right up at the intersection of Germantown and Clopper and along Clopper, and then residential townhome units. The applicant recently obtained approval of a local map amendment to rezone the property from the former R200 and TDR6 zones to the commercial residential neighborhood floating zone with a maximum FAR of 1.0. During the rezoning process, the applicant worked very closely with both DOT and Park and Planning staff on the design and alignment of Liberty Mill Road. We originally were proposing to create a series of internal private streets within the development, but based on feedback received from the county, we redesigned the project to provide for predominantly public road connections, including, which is germane to this application, an S-curve road, which will be the realignment of Liberty Mill Road, which runs through the approximate center of the property and connects Clopper and Lehman Farm Road. The alignment was strategically designed in working with the county to maintain the existing access point on Clopper, and also in accordance with the county's intersection spacing requirements to align with the access point on the opposite side of Lehman Farm Road, which is Ale House Circle. The final alignment and configuration, although we've had significant county input in the design thus far, will be finalized in connection with the preliminary plan of subdivision, which the applicant will be filing in short order with the Montgomery County Planning Board. If you'll advance the next slide, please. The proposed abandonment, this is just a rendering that showcases the proposed development. As you can see, the proposed abandonment, which will help facilitate this redevelopment, will greatly improve pedestrian and vehicular circulation by extending the connection between Clopper and Lehman Farm Road. It will create an active through street that has sidewalks on both sides and is activated by public open spaces, townhomes, and commercial development. We are only seeking to abandon those portions of the right-of-way that fall outside of the new Liberty Mill Road alignment, which is shown on the screen before you. As I mentioned, we're subsequently going to be seeking preliminary plan approval from the Montgomery County Planning Board. As such, we are requesting some flexibility with this abandonment application regarding the areas to be abandoned. Our application shows the outside extent of the right-of-way that we believe needs to be abandoned to accommodate this redevelopment. However, there is a small chance that as we move through the preliminary plan process and get comments from Park and Planning and DOT, sorry, that there might be slight adjustments to the extent of the abandonment. Sorry about that. If you'll advance the next slide, you can kind of see where I'm going to highlight an example of this. So we are currently showing or requesting abandonment based on an 18.75 foot truncation right at the intersection of Clopper and Liberty Mill Road. This is based on Park and Planning's general desire to see narrower curb cuts, especially in light of the county's Vision Zero goals and priorities. However, there's a chance as we move through the process that DOT may request a standard 25 foot truncation at this intersection, which would result in approximately 204 square feet less of abandonment area that would be needed. So if you'll advance one more slide, on the next slide, you'll see we've just proposed a draft condition, something to this effect that would provide for some flexibility and make it clear that kind of up to the 22,446 square feet that we've requested in our application can be abandoned. I think this would actually be Exhibit B based on the exhibits that Ms. McRae read into the record. But the actual amount of the right-of-way will be finalized at the time of preliminary plan of subdivision and reflected at the record plat, which we know is needed to formalize the abandonment application. And conditions 1 and 3 here are very much in line with the conditions that DOT was recommending in their letter, just recognizing that the applicant obviously needs to dedicate the additional right-of-way to complete the realignment of Liberty Mill Road. The only other comment I would just kind of make here in terms of conditions of approval is on DOT's letter recommending approval of the right-of-way. The last condition included that the applicant need to relocate the existing utilities into the new right-of-way. And the only thing that I would request is that with that, similarly, there be some flexibility that either the utilities be relocated or the applicant grant sufficient easements to accommodate the existing utilities if they're deemed not to need to be relocated. If you'll advance just one more slide. Thank you. This is just a diagram showing the various components that we are seeking to abandon with our application. As demonstrated in the application that we submitted into the record, the abandonment satisfies all the required findings of the code and will result in an approved circulation in and around the property. The portions of the right-of-way that we're seeking to abandon are no longer needed for present public use. As I've mentioned, the current right-of-way really isn't being used for the purposes which it was originally intended, since MD 118 has been relocated. And then actually instead, this abandonment will facilitate improved pedestrian vehicular circulation by allowing for the reintroduction of that connection between Clopper and Lehman Farm Road. The abandonment promotes the goals and objectives of the master plan by facilitating the redevelopment of this underutilized vacant property. And it will result in an enhanced roadway network and improved pedestrian safety by reintroducing connections between Clopper and Lehman Farm with sidewalks for improved pedestrian safety along both sides of the roadway. And lastly, the abandonment is supported by a change of fact and circumstances, since the original dedication, as we mentioned several times, this used to be 118, which was relocated and re-expanded in the 1980s. And the road since then has not really served any real public purpose. With that kind of overall summary, I would just conclude by noting the applicant respectfully, requests approval of the abandonment as shown in our application materials, and our team, including myself and the civil engineers, land planners, and applicant are all here to answer any questions you may have, or if you'd like us to go into any more detail on the application, we're more than happy to.
Sure. So I did have one question. You talked about the utilities being relocated, and maybe if that's not needed, to have an easement instead of that, so that you can keep the existing utilities in the same location. What exactly are you talking about in terms of utilities? Is it, do you know where exactly that portion is?
I can let Kevin Foster with Cochiclo and Weber maybe speak up. I know that when I was reading the letter, it was just more my initial inclination was just as we're beginning this preliminary plan process, and there's some uncertainties still known exactly kind of what may need to happen with the existing utilities based on kind of the final design of the project that's going to be vetted as we move forward with the site plan and preliminary plan, that it would be helpful to have that flexibility as we work with the agencies through those processes. If, for example, like a public utility easement was something that was more favorable in light of the design of the project, that there was that opportunity as opposed to having to relocate them inside the new right-of-way. But Kevin, I don't know if you have anything additional to add to that. Kevin,
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, the existing utilities, we know they're, because this was a major thoroughfare at one time, many years ago, Route 118, there was existing power lines running along the entire length of that right-of-way that runs through the property, as well as a water line, a WSSC water line. Both of those still exist today, even though the road was cul-de-saced. Those utilities continued on down toward Lehman Farm Road. They exist. We know exactly where they are. And as part of our floating zone plan, we actually planned the unit locations to keep the utility lines where they were. So we created a gap in the center to allow those existing utilities to stay there, especially the water line that's serving multiple areas, not just this site. It seemed prudent to keep it where it was and not try to move it. It didn't need to be moved, as well as the overhead power lines. So we've already planned ahead for this, and we anticipate anytime that any of these utilities are outside of the public right-of-ways, we will have to grant the required right-of-ways and easements that they deem sufficient during the preliminary plan process.
And the one thing I would add and note that might be helpful to the hearing examiner is that some of those utilities, including like the water line, run through some environmentally sensitive areas on the property that are kind of shown in the bottom corner of the plan view. And, relocating those could also result in really undesirable impacts to those environmental features, which include wetlands and streams.
Okay. There was a couple of comments that were made about, the development review approvals and also the traffic approval with some conditions. I'm assuming those conditions will be met. Is that the case?
I'm sorry, could you clarify which conditions you were referring to about development review conditions?
I do not know what the exact conditions were, but when Tiara introduced the different exhibits, she did show the development review approval from DOT and also the traffic approval. Both had conditions with them, and I just wanted to make sure that that is, also part of your plan to meet those conditions.
I know I've seen the conditions of approval from DOT, and that's where the third condition that I was just mentioning, the condition was specifically, I can read it, all existing utilities along the proposed abandoned portions of Liberty Mill Road shall be relocated within the future realigned Liberty Mill Road right away at the applicant's expense. So that was the one we were just referring to in terms of needing some flexibility about easements for
Okay.
existing utilities to remain. The other two were acceptable to the applicant in terms of dedicating the additional land needed for the realigned Liberty Mill Road and maintaining any of the abandoned portions of the right of way.
Okay. Okay, so for the utility and power, you're going to ask for an exception from what was requested.
Yeah, we just like the flexibility. We recognize that, we need to give either need to be within the new Liberty Mill Road right of way or sufficient easements granted to the various agencies, utilities in the county to maintain the existing location.
Okay. Those were all the comments or questions that I had, and we can open it up for any public comment at this time. So the first person we had, or the only person we had registered, was Miss Marian Falk. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Marion, I've sent a request for you to unmute yourself. Please let me know if you.
Okay.
Yep, good to go.
I am muted. Okay, yes, I did have some concerns, and you get a nice try on my last name, but it's Folky.
I'm sorry.
Fun in college, trust me. The one question that I had was why we're getting more townhouses. And I assume that's been addressed by some other area. But if you are going to build up that side of Clopper, are you going to put another traffic light in at Liberty Mill? Because you're going to have then like 4 traffic lights coming up Clopper Road and going up towards Boyd's within the space of maybe 1/4 mile. And it's already a mess, assuming that people get back to work as it is. And it's also become, I've lived here for over 30 years, a pollution hazard for several hours of the day.
So
So is the accommodation, are they going to put a traffic light in? Because I live across the street from off of Liberty Mill and Duchin. And you're extending Liberty Mill on what I'm going to call the west side of Clopper. So getting out onto Clopper with people are going to use a shortcut once you put that road in from Lehman Farm out back onto Clopper Road.
Is there a map maybe we could put up just to?
Well, yeah, there's a map that I've got the documents here that were sent to the homeowners association,
Mhm.
but this map is very difficult.
Okay,
On the other side of Clopper Road, going east, Liberty Mill continues on down to the railway station,
correct.
okay?
Mhm.
So what are they gonna put a light in there once they open up Liberty Mill on the west side?
So I don't know if the traffic impacts have addressed that already, or even if you're at that stage at this point, but.
Why, that's gonna be crucial to where they're gonna be, you're gonna build 65 new townhouses or whatever it is, and a lot of those people may be people that are going to want to be taking the train. And all of a sudden, you're gonna have traffic that was once diverted up to what I'll call the new 118. And that's how people go down. It's gonna be coming back and forth across on the new Liberty Mill.
Okay, so yeah, I hear that concern. And is there some other concern that you'd like to add while you have your time to speak, so that we can get everything in, and then I can give the applicant a chance to talk to some of these concerns that you've mentioned?
My other big concern is that there used to be an Esso station in this area that you're redeveloping, and when they paved that over, or they didn't really pave it over, but it's part of what exists now of Liberty Mill on that side, which is maybe about a quarter of a mile or some, I don't know, it's 200 yards of paved things. They never, as far as I know, ever dug up the gas tanks that are underneath that area. And even though it's marked on the map, as near as I can tell, American Oil Co., they just kind of pulled up stakes and left. And I believe those gas tanks underneath are still there. And somebody might want to check that before they try to do any building.
Okay. Is that one of the properties that is being redeveloped?
It sure look, well, it's all one area. If you take where the Kingsview Shopping Center is, it's to the north of that, but it's going to be right where you're going to put the new Liberty Mill Road.
Okay. Okay, so, yeah, go ahead.
I think there's one other thing I had. Okay, my main concern is you're going to have 4 consecutive traffic lights coming up Clopper Road, which is going to make it impossible for anybody to get anywhere during any kind of rush hour. The other reason I had concern, and I was hoping that you would address, was what type of commercial properties are we talking about? Because currently in Kingsview Center and across the street on the other side of Clopper, where there's another gas station, there are numerous vacant properties, commercial properties as it is. And the idea of having additional commercial development when this area has, with the exception of the giant food store and the Montgomery County Liquor Store, has had quite a rotation over the past 30 years of commercial properties, and to add additional commercial properties would be kind of an iffy proposition, even with the additional townhouses. And that's all I've got.
Okay, well, thank you for taking the time to attend this hearing, and of course, giving us all of your comments. And I'm not sure if all of these comments are relevant to the abandonment. Some of them are more development related, and we'll definitely take them into consideration as we move through the process. Now, would the applicant like to present some answers or attempt to answer some of these questions?
Sure, yes. I can start, and then Kevin, I'll turn it over to you for some of the more technical responses. I would note, I think, as the hearing examiner just noted, that some of the questions regarding the use of and the development of the property was something that was thoroughly considered and discussed and vetted as part of the rezoning to the property, which was approved for the mixed use, predominantly residential development with townhomes. The property is significantly constrained, which is what really drives that and market demands for the townhouse product type. And in terms of the commercial development, while that was determined to be the most compatible given the property's frontage on Clopper Road, the specific users have not yet been identified. We're just now beginning the site plan and preliminary plan process, and the commercial will actually come in the second phase of the site plan as the applicant secures users for those buildings. And in terms of the signal, I'll turn that over to you, Kevin. I don't believe that we're proposing a traffic signal at that intersection, but if you can address that, and the gas tanks, if you have that information.
Sure. No, as far as the traffic signal goes, no, we were not anticipating adding another traffic signal to Clopper Road. With the layout of this development, there are multiple ways that residents, either in the development or neighboring residents, can traverse the roads. And that was part of the plan, was to not funnel all the traffic to a single point. We provided private road A that comes out to Darnestown Road, Liberty Mill Road connected down to Lehman Farm, which also comes out to Darnestown. So say somebody living in this subdivision wanted to get to the train, the easiest way for them to do that would be to come out to Darnestown Road and head east on Darnestown through the traffic light that's already at Clopper, down Germantown Road, and either get on Accent Way or Dawson Farm Way back over to get to the train. So there's multiple ways to get there without having to go across Clopper at Liberty Mill. That's kind of the thought process behind how we had laid this out. As far as the gas station, as far as I know, those tanks were removed when the building was razed. Typically with MDE regulations, you're not allowed to leave when gas stations are abandoned or taken out of use. They have to be removed. They're not allowed to stay in the ground, and that's part of the permitting process.
Okay. Rob, I know you wanted to make a comment, so do you want to jump in at this point?
Sorry, not a comment, just a quick question. Could you just please post the overview of the area to be abandoned again? That would just be helpful to show the points. And could you just please just tell us from what point to what point? It looks like, I know that you said the road ends in a cul-de-sac, but the abandonment application is to actually abandon even the point beyond the cul-de-sac to Lehman Farm Road, correct? That's where there's nothing presently there. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's nothing presently there, physically there. It's our belief that that was a prescriptive right-of-way, and that the abandonment of that use has thus abandoned the right-of-way, although we have included it in this formal application request just for comprehensive purposes to make sure that the record is really clear moving forward, that the entire stretch would be abandoned.
Okay. And presently, I know that you said that you owned, or the applicant owns, all of the properties surrounding this the road, including the part that's not being presently used that way at all, except for the one corner piece. The one corner piece you said was owned by Pepco, is that correct?
That's correct.
How do they access their property?
It's currently, Kevin, chime in if I'm incorrect about this, but it's currently vacant. I know they had plans to put a substation there, but it's not currently developed. So I don't believe that there is any existing site access, but Kevin.
Yes, it is. It's currently vacant. They don't have a use there, but the edges of that property are relatively level. So at some time in the future, they have pretty much direct access to two sides of the property on Clopper Road and existing Liberty Mill Road.
So they would continue to have access to Clopper Road.
Yes, we would not be changing either of those two frontages.
Okay. The other thing that was mentioned was that there's no preliminary plan approval yet for this. One of the conditions of abandonment is actually going to record plat and having this put into a subdivision plat. So I was wondering what the plan was for taking it through to that step. And so I just wondered if you could elaborate on that as well.
Sure, yes. So we are planning to file both a concurrent site and preliminary plan application with the planning board probably in the next week or two. So we are about to get underway with the subdivision process, which based on their the regulation should take 120 days to get to the planning board for approval. And thereafter, we would move forward with the record plat.
Okay. And one of the conditions also is required by law, if the council were to grant an abandonment, is that all of this be completed within 5 years. Just wanted to make sure that you're not asking for any additional time for that process.
Just to clarify that the record plat, which I know effectuates the abandonment, that's what has to be completed within the 5 years, correct?
Correct. Yes. Okay.
We are not asking for additional time.
Okay.
All right, is that it, Rob?
That's all the questions that I had.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's no, I just want to confirm, other than Marion, there was nobody else that wanted to speak or had any comments or that joined the call later on, correct?
I don't see any other requests within the chat.
Okay. All right, well, I think I have, answered all my questions, and Rob asked some good insightful questions too. We'll go ahead and process all of this information, and I will go ahead and once this is done, go through the process of creating the report and recommendation for the county executive to review and then submit to the county council, and we'll move forward from there. If there are no other questions or comments, we can close this hearing.